I'm trying to think.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Casual Sports Podcast, day one of our two-day high school football extravaganza. Today, featuring first-time guest here on the Casual Sports Podcast, but a regular on all of YSN shows, Richie Giuliano. You can check out his Twitter there at the bottom as well. Welcome to the show, man. First time having you on. Mike Wolfgang will also be joining us in a minute. He's running a few minutes behind, but we're breaking down half the football games that we got going on the network Friday and Saturday. We're taking the next half on tomorrow's show. Richie, we got your game, so I figured great opportunity to bring you on. Plus, you should be able to make us fill up this full hour with all the games that we got going on. You get a little bit more in depth on this show than you get to when you have 10 people on Power Hour on Fridays.
That's a good point. It's just us, and then we're going to have, of course, Mike Wolfgang come on and talk a little bit. So, we're going to be able to banter back and forth. We might have some different opinions on certain games. So it's going to be a fun show. I always love breaking down some high school football. So, it's going to be a lot of fun, especially because I think we're going to get through half of them today, and then you guys are going to go through the other half tomorrow. So we're really going to go in depth on these football matchups here today.
Yeah, people are going to get to hear all of the thoughts and opinions of Richie Giuliano today. They don't always get all the inside stuff from you on Power Hour, but our first game we're going to go over as we wait for Mike to come onto the show in a little bit. Brookfield versus Campbell. Now, I don't think you've gotten the chance to see either one of these teams yet on the season, but Brookfield, man, they are tearing it up. I know Power Hours talked a lot about it, that this is a team in Brookfield that can win out the rest of the season, still never crack the power rankings because of that week one loss to Ursuline. But yeah, I've seen them twice. I didn't see him last week against Liberty. Matt's going to be at this game over there in John Knapp against Campbell. Beautiful field. I love going over there for Valley Christian's games. But this is a really great Brookfield team at the moment, and their defense really stiffened up since that Ursuline game. 14 points allowed to Springfield, 3 to Western Reserve, and just 6 to Liberty last week. We saw Campbell get absolutely run over last week against Crestview at home. They get home again this week and against an offense in Brookfield that's arguably better than Crestview, a much stronger defense arguably than Crestview, and this is not lining up well on paper for the Red Devils.
No, it's not. They took their lumps and bruises this year, and I think Brookfield's starting to click on all cylinders right now. Like you said, everybody kind of jumped on the bandwagon for Brookfield in that first week. We had a lot of guys in our YSN pick'ems pick Brookfield to upset the Ursuline Irish at Stambaugh Stadium in week number 1. But, unfortunately, things just didn't go their way. I think a lot of people realized how powerful Ursuline actually is this year.
That's what I saw in that game.
That's a quality loss for Brookfield. They're playing up a couple divisions. That's not a bad loss. They're led by Isaiah Jones, who has over 100 yards receiving pretty much every single night. Pawlowski, who's their running back, he's averaging close to 100 every night. So
Pawlowski's their quarterback, Richie.
Yeah, and he's running and he's dual threat.
He's
doing both.
He's slippery too. That's the thing. When he's back in that pocket and the pocket collapses as it eventually does, because they've gone up against some strong defenses, especially in Ursuline. They got run over by that defensive line. But then Springfield, a team that I don't think that their offense there, but I think their line play has been fantastic, and they put pressure on Pawlowski in that game. And it seems like every time he's under pressure, the dude's covered in baby oil. He just slips out of there and breaks off a 20-yard run out of nowhere, and he's making better moves than Lamar Jackson down the field as well. Isaiah Jones, as you mentioned, also now into Ohio's class of 2023 top 100. He's a 2-star recruit now for the Warriors, getting phone calls from East Carolina, Army, couple of big offers coming his way, and they already have a recruit going to Navy and Connor Heater. So they're really starting to amp up. Christian Davis, just a sophomore this year. We've already heard he's getting calls from some of the big schools in the area trying to get him to come their way for these next 2 seasons. But he's going to be a guy, talked to him a couple of weeks ago. His goal is Ohio State. So big goals for that kid. And that Warrior squad, they got a program going up. It continues to go up with that great head coach from Randy Clark.
Yeah, I mean, everybody talks about their offense. You got Pulowski, like you talked about, the 2-star wide receiver, but nobody's giving credit to the defensive side of the ball for Brookfield. Man, have they been good, holding opponents to 9 points in the last 2 weeks. Granted, Western Reserve and Liberty have kind of struggled and labored offensively this season, but still in a high school football game, to hold an opponent less than a touchdown a game is impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, Ursuline scored 52, and that's probably the only game we're going to see this year for Brookfield that they give up more than 40 points total on the season.
It might be the only game you see them give up more than 20. I mean, you look at their schedule down the line. Crestview, we saw their offense finally start clicking against Campbell last week, but is that going to carry over again? As have they found a new opponent for this weekend after their game with Liberty was canceled?
I have not heard anything about Crestview finding a new opponent just yet. Very unfortunate. Liberty's having some issues with some illnesses in their program, so they had to cancel the game. And right now, from what I've heard, Crestview still has not found the game yet for week 5.
All right. Well, you look Brookfield. They're going to have Crestview after this. Newton Falls, LeBray, Garfield, and Champion. Garfield, a really great team, but they're not one that goes up there and has to put up 50 points to win a game because their defense is so strong and they have just a powerful running offense. So you look at them and, that was probably the biggest test left for Brookfield, but not necessarily an offensive onslaught that they're going to have to keep pace. It's just going to be, can you out physical Garfield? The answer probably no. But they have enough weapons out there that they can they might be able to have the speed advantage in that game. And please welcome onto the show, Mike Wolfgang. Mike, I'm kicking you out of the middle spot. We got a special guest today. So
that's good. Richie can have it.
He's taking the center.
What's up?
What's up, Mike? How's class?
Good. Got a little late, but I'm sure you don't miss it.
No.
Well, Mike, you'll be done soon enough.
Yeah, I'm counting down, man. I'm getting ready.
Yeah. Well, Mike, we're talking Brookfield Campbell here, our first game. We're still on it, so you didn't miss that much, breaking it down. Quick thoughts here on what do you think about these two teams, Brookfield going up against Campbell?
Well, first things, Campbell's not great. I know that. Friday, the game, I forget who they played, but they were down 60 at half, and that just stayed that way.
63-0 to Crestview.
Our cash back on dining, including takeout with Chase Freedom Unlimited. So it's not a problem at all.
Is that my end?
That was me.
Oh, okay. Richie, unprofessional, man. Making your first appearance.
I had the Max Preps up, and they start playing those ads.
I got all those muted ahead of time because Max Preps, they love throwing you 1,000 ads.
I know.
All these sites do anymore, but Campbell and Brookfield, right? I forgot who we were talking.
Campbell Brookfield in Campbell.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. At least I don't even know if there's a huge advantage for Campbell either, because we talked about yesterday or Tuesday, Alec, with some of the volleyball games that the home court advantage, or home field advantage, whatever you want to call it. But in this case, field advantage for football. Campbell doesn't have too much advantage with really anything because they're just they're a program that's been struggling for a long time now. And I think Brookfield's the talent edge is certainly on their side, so that definitely favors them in this match. But other than that, it's pretty much a talent gap between these both two teams for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's go ahead and make picks. I'm taking Brookfield in this game, no question.
Yep, same. I'll take Warriors in this one big time.
Give me Brookfield.
I like the picks, boys. Taking Brookfield. Matt Morrison's going to be on that call Friday night. Richie,
fired up.
Now we headed over to your game, and it's probably game of the week, hands down. Canfield, Cheney, two teams super high in the power rankings, looking great, both receiving top marks in the state. Canfield, via Max Preps, ranked 28th in the state of Ohio right now at the moment, and Cheney, who comes in also undefeated. They're a little back. They're ranked 84th, but they're getting a knock. Strength of schedule hasn't been there. They've put some big names on the schedule. Unfortunately, those big names haven't exactly lived up to the name so far this season. But Canfield, they've been impressive. I mean, I don't think you can really say anything more than that. But Richie, I'm going to hand this to you. This is obviously your alma mater, your team. You've been covering them well. You know everything about them. And Brock Lowry, future Iowa State quarterback. So tell us more about this game.
Yeah, everybody talks about Brock Lowry, but what's going to win this ball game for Canfield, I think, is their defense. Their defensive line returns everybody from a year ago. Very experienced, two really good defensive ends, and Hunter Knotts and Dom DiDonato, who bring a lot of pressure off the edge. But their secondary is a little bit young, but they've had some guys that have stepped up big time. You got guys like Caden Cahoot, Peyton Alquist, those two linebackers that are in on every single play defensively. And I've done a good job living up to that Canfield linebacking name that's been so good in the past couple of years. So if Canfield's going to win this, it's going to be with their defense. Good stats for you guys. In the last 2 games, Canfield's given up just 1 touchdown, and they've only given up 7 first downs total in the last 2 games. So their defense has been really stout. Flipping the field has been not an issue for Canfield at all. They've started past the 35 every single possession last week against St. Thomas More. So, it's all in the defense, and then moving over to Cheney, it's their offense, right? Kind of a little contradicting because you're going to have a guy like DJ Waller who's committed to go play D1 football. I heard that he decommitted from Toledo and that he's going to go to West Virginia.
Oh, I hadn't heard that yet.
And then Hewlett, the other guy who's going to play linebacker at Cincinnati, athlete on the edge. And they're bringing back Matthew Jones at quarterback. So Hewlett was the quarterback for the last 2 years. He suffered a lot of injuries on the basketball court. So, with him going to Cincinnati, they're not going to play him at quarterback anymore. They're going to have Matthew Jones, who's a sophomore, step up. And last year, it took him a little bit of time to get used to that varsity experience. He did throw over 600 yards, which was pretty solid, and 7 touchdowns from a year ago. But Canfield was his first game of the year when he came in. So, that was an inexperienced game for Jones and one that Canfield took full advantage of, kind of beating up the Cowboys. But they're looking for some revenge this year with some new pieces. And, I think for Cheney, it's going to come down to their offense. If they can get Hewlett the ball and if they could get Waller the ball. And then for Canfield, how many turnovers can they force and turn that into offense? I think that's going to be the keys to the game.
Well, I think you make a lot of great points there. And Hewlett right now ranked the 20th top recruit in the state of Ohio for the 2023 class. And DJ Waller not too far behind him either. He's ranked, back here at 64th. And as you mentioned, decommit from Toledo going to now a Big 12 school. That's a huge change. And I think that really goes into the preparation that he's done. And both of these schools, man, they really turned the program around. Matt and I saw this Cheney squad towards the end of last year for, I think, their rivalry game against East it was. And they ran over East in that game last year, and we got down on the field talking Clive Wilson, and who would have thought that they send off a guy like Clive and Tennington to 2 FBS schools, and they have more guys in the waiting realm just right behind it. And after last season, everyone was talking, oh, Cheney's going to be this, Cheney's going to be that, and I was kind of like, you mean the same Cheney I saw last year? Like, that had a losing record. I liked everybody on the team. Like, I didn't see anything wrong. That I was kind of surprised when we saw that they didn't have a great record. And now they've come out this season absolutely lighting it up. And great job over there with that program. I keep saying at the Steel Valley, it seems like everybody is getting their shot at glory. I mean, we've seen Ursuline obviously be at the top. Cardinal Mooney in basketball made some great runs with both boys and girls. And now Cheney's got a shot here yet again after a pretty good basketball season by him as well. So, the Steel Valley's coming up. Can't wait for it to be East's turn. That'll be the most interesting run, I think, of all of them. The biggest Cinderella story in the Steel Valley. You imagine East comes out of nowhere next season in football, takes down Ursuline, Mooney, and Cheney next year. How about that? But I think Matt Jones is just an epic quarterback. Saw him last year developing, and he's just calm, cool and collected type character, and he doesn't seem to get rattled. Having that young of a guy coming out here for right now a state contender, and he's playing this well, he's going to have a lot of eyeballs coming on him in the next 2 years if he keeps playing at this rate.
I think.
Go ahead, Richie. Go ahead.
I think that's somewhere where he kind of matured in the offseason, right? I think he had a lot of trouble in his first year getting used to a lot of pressure off the edges, and he might have folded a little too quickly where he couldn't get the ball out quick enough and get it into these talented receivers. But now that they're developing, he had a full offseason to prep as the quarterback, as he was playing different positions when he was a freshman. He wasn't really a quarterback because they had Hewlett. So they kind of just threw him in there and said, if we could get through this season, great. And they ended up 4-5, which isn't the record they wanted, but they still were able to gain a lot of momentum coming into this year. winning a lot of their last couple games. So, I think that's where he has matured from his freshman to now sophomore year. And I think that's where Cheney's going to get a lot of their points from, the quarterback combo of Jones and then their receivers and Hewlett and Waller.
Well, and, having a year last year wasn't where you expected it to be. And it's young guys, you have chances to get experience and opportunities. I think that's what you're saying, Richie. And you guys know playing sports in high school that you're not sometimes you're gonna be moving around from position to position, but when you actually are locked into your position, that's the only thing you have to focus on. That's another way for you to get better, besides just the experience. So being that comfort zone and being in your spot that you're going to be in, that makes things a lot easier.
Well, coming up this weekend, man, it's going to be a big win for whoever comes out of this game. And for a young guy in Matt Jones to go out this high profile of a game, this is going to be, to me, the biggest test of his career so far. You've managed the noise. You've won the games you were supposed to. You've put up good numbers. Can you go up now against the number 3 ranked team in Division III football, 5 spots ahead of you? And can you continue to play at that level? Can you avoid the turnovers against an amazing Canfield defense that has now gotten better every single week since the West Branch offensive explosion? They allowed 31. They allowed 12 points the week after to Bellevue. They allowed 7 to Poland. And then they shut out the Canadians last week. So their defense is getting better. This is going to be an absolute war. Whoever controls line of scrimmage, I know you're saying defensive battle, but to me, it's always that line of scrimmage. Can you give both these quarterbacks enough time to get downfield? And obviously, Brock Lauer is going to have to go up against a really good secondary for Cheney that features 2 FBS guys. And that's going to be a test for him. And I think one that is going to point some more eyeballs to him potentially getting the nod once he gets up to Iowa State in not too long to potentially take over that program as well. So really a challenge for both these quarterbacks. But those trenches, are you going to have enough time? Can you control time of possession? And can you just play your style of offense long enough to put your opponent away? It's going to be an absolute war between these two.
And I think Cheney's going to have to lock in because, they face Canfield on Friday night. Yeah, it's great. You're home. Look who they play next week, Ursuline. This is a tough stretch for the Cheney Cowboys. So, they're really going to have to mentally lock in and, prepare like it's a Super Bowl in both weeks of practice because, this is one of their best games of the year. Canfield, like you said, top 5 in Division III. They're number 1 in Region 9 right now, ahead of Chardon, who has been a state champion twice in the last 3 years. So, this is kind of Canfield's year to prove that they are still up for a state championship title and a contender this year. So,
Richie, one more thing to add about this matchup. Cheney hasn't beat Canfield since 2004.
Wow.
18 years, a long time coming. However, in 2004, the game happened on September 17th. This time happens on September 16th. So perhaps we see a repeat in history thanks to the dates coming up. But long time coming. Cheney's been waiting for this one.
Yeah, they have.
So let's go ahead and make picks. Richie, I know you're a Canfield guy. You going with your boys out there?
Yeah, I was able to talk to Lansky last night. He has me ready to go. He said this is one of the best weeks of practice that they have had all season, even with the Poland week, which is a rivalry game. So, with that, I think the Cardinals are going to be ready to go on Friday night. I'm going to take Canfield here.
Mike?
I like the trend that Richie brought up, too. If you look at their scores through their first 4 games, that defensively, they've gotten better allowing points every single game to this week. So I kind of like that. Their defense is playing in a good level, and I think they're playing overall at a good level. So I got to go Canfield, too.
Canfield, man, they got a lot of young studs coming up. They're going to be here next couple of years. I don't think I have any problem saying. I think this is going to be a school that potentially goes on a historic run, kind of like we saw out of Kirtland these last couple of years, making some huge runs with some great players. But this time around, it's been 18 years for Cheney since they pulled this off. And if they're going to do it, this is the team that has to do it because you're not getting any better. You got 2 FBS defenders coming out of your program. They're both going over to the Big 12, and you have a young stud in Matt Jones surrounded by weapons all around him. I used to use this bell for college football for upsets. I'm giving it to Cheney this time out. Ring that bell, baby. I think Cheney's pulling this upset over Canfield, and I ain't afraid to say it. I originally was going to go with Canfield in this matchup, but man, if Cheney can do it, they need it. This would be a huge momentum grabber that I think will propel them to whole new heights that they haven't had at this school in a long time.
Like you said, Alec, this is their best chance to end that streak. I really think, the year they've had so far, 4-0. Look at some of the numbers from their 4 wins too. It is the best chance to do it for sure.
Next game for us, though, is we get out of an exciting one. This one I think might be closer, maybe a good chance for a team to pick up their first win, but Champion coming in 2-2. I saw them this past Friday. They looked really good. I believe Joey Fallon is running back, getting interviewed tomorrow on Running Point, so make sure you tune into that. I think they said 1:30 is when he's coming on, but Champion, they're going up against the 0-4 LeBray, who hasn't scored a point since week 2 against Valley Christian. They've had a tough go of things, but I saw this Champion squad. They've gotten a lot better in the last 2 weeks since they took some hard losses beginning of the year to JFK and Rootstown. Forgive the JFK one. Rootstown they could have pulled out. So you talk about a Champion team that really a lot better than what that 2-2 record says. LeBray, I still think the pieces are still there. They just haven't really been able to put them together after they lose their head coach in the offseason. So I think there's a chance if they come out here and play a really good game and play to the level I think we all know that they're capable of, they could steal this game. But I think you got to look at Champion coming in as the favorite.
Yeah, I think LeBray just lost too much from last year. They lost that three-headed monster that they had with their D1 quarterback, Devin Carter, who was one of the best running backs to ever come through LeBray. And then, of course, like you said, they lose Armenia, who went to Western Reserve. So, this is a rebuilding year for a first-year head coach with a lot of young guys on the offensive and defensive line, kind of like what we saw with Champion last year, right? They were younger. They had, I think, 3 or 4 freshmen starting on their line. Now they're more experienced. Joey Fell can do it in more ways than one. He could run it and he could throw it. So I like Champion here in week number 5.
Mike?
I got to go Champion as well, but, because LeBray just doesn't look good. And this is a place you really don't see this program in too often. You guys know that too. That struggles in the offseason, whatever you want to point to them. I mean, their scores have pretty much been ugly in their first 4 games. You don't expect them to be down too long, but I think in this matchup, I think Champion's playing a little better than them, so I'll go Champion as well.
Yeah, well, LeBray, they've been outscored 68-0 in their last 2 games, which is obviously not what you want to see in Champion. Since those 2 losses, they've really turned things around, and they're on the road again, just their second time out. We'll see how that affects them. I know they were dealing with some injuries and illnesses last week, so we'll see how that carries over. But so long as they have Joey Fell, who absolutely put his team on the back in that Newton Falls third and fourth quarter, and so long as he's out there performing and can continue to push the ball down the field like we've seen him be able to do in these last 2 games, Champion should win this thing in a landslide. But if LeBray puts things back together this week, we're going to have ourselves a ball game in LeBray.
And how exciting was that game for Champion Newton Falls? That was a barn burner, man. I mean, a weird game. A lot of fun.
A weird barn burner too, because first 6 minutes, I think, first 5 minutes, 4 touchdowns. Then we only have a safety after that in the first half. It was 16-14 at the end of the first half. And Matt and I are just up there like, what is this game? And all the touchdowns came on massive plays. I think we had 2 50-yard rushing touchdowns, a 99-yard rushing touchdown from Cam Brainard, and I think there was another I don't remember who took it in, but there was another 40-plus yard rushing touchdown to start out that game. Then the defense has really stood up, and that's what impressed me. Champion made all the adjustments and came out with a win. When you're in that kind of a shootout and you can make the adjustments on the fly that early, it really stands out to me on how you are as a program, and they have some really great young leadership over there as well. Maybe one of the better young coaches we have in the Valley. There's not a ton of young guys. We got some old, experienced heads out here, but Champion, they got some young muscle under there. I like that group.
Yeah, I do too. I think Champion's going to win this one big coming up.
Next game here, the Harrison Central Huskies coming in at 3-1 to take on the Potters, who haven't won since week 1. The offense has really fallen off the schneid. They put up 44 against Minerva, but then 14 against Indian Creek, 6 against a rough Salem team, and no points last week against Beaver, and they allowed 58, their worst so far this season. Richie, this is a group that had a lot of hype to start out the season, and they've really since fallen off. And now you got a team coming out of Cadiz, Ohio, who did lose their last week. Fortunately for the Potters, that's momentum for Harrison Central got stalled a little bit, but they're a program that has really been putting up the points so far this season.
Yeah, they have, East Liverpool. They had a chance with their new stadium to come out in a rivalry game against Beaver Local and show them what they're all about and get that first victory on their home turf. But that was just not the case. I mean, they just got pounced by Beaver Local last week. And, you got a really good Harrison Central Huskies team coming in, like you said. They've played a very difficult strength of schedule. They played a team from Pittsburgh called Perry. And they beat Perry by a final of 35-34. So, unfortunately, I'm going to have to go against the grain here, pick against the YSN school. I'm going to have to go with Harrison Central.
Mike?
I'm going to go that way too as well, Richie, because on the other side, like you said, it hasn't been pretty. You haven't been able to put things together. Harrison Central, I think, too, playing some of these other bigger schools, like you mentioned Perry, they're usually pretty good. Some of these, and just look at the points they're putting up per game, 36, 48, 35, 45. I know they lost. Or no, they gave up that. I'm sorry, but those three that they scored. I mean, it's playing good. And when you're a team on the other side that has some struggles too, are you going to be able to? Alec, we talk about this all the time in college and even pros too. If you're facing a better offense and your defense is not that great, what are you going to do to try to make adjustments? And some teams can do it, some can't. But I think they're just playing too good offensively right now. Harrison Central.
Harrison Central. That's the thing, Richie. You do mention that strength of schedule, but you look at it statistically, and Max Preps has their strength of schedule ranking. And Harrison Central right now, their strength of schedule number-wise, negative 18.1. And, you go over to East Liverpool, they're negative 18.4. So strength of schedule, I think there is a similar comparison between the two. They're both negative. They're both negative 18. East Liverpool, 2 divisions higher up than, you see with Harrison Central, who really, they register as a Division 5 team if they were in Ohio, out of Ohio. So, there's both really good units, but going up a division, I think you got to give the Potters a little bit of love here. I know they're 1-3. Their offense has really started to struggle. They messed up the home opener last week against Beaver, get absolutely stormed back. I don't think you're going to see the same thing this week. I think the Potters are going to play much tougher. I think they're going to give these boys out of Cadiz a real strong run for their money. Unfortunately, I got to go against YSN and take Harrison Central. They've been playing, like you said, out of their minds, and their offense pretty good. But saw it last week. Offense finally took a slip. Their defense gave up a bunch. That gives me hope. I think the Potters got a chance to steal it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only reason I brought up strength of schedule is that Union team they lost to last week's 4-0. Right. I think if you look at the win-loss column for their opponents, it's kind of deceiving. Because you look at a team like Perry from Pittsburgh who lost to Westinghouse, who's always good. They beat LaSalle, who's always up for a state championship, and they're going to play Taylor Alderdice, who a lot of people know around this area as well. So, I guess some of these win-loss records right now aren't good as I'm diving into them, but these are traditionally some really good programs that they have
big names,
back-to-back games.
Yeah, they carry that name recognition, but now we're going to move on to a game that I think not getting a lot of eyeballs, but I think it's going to be real good. Jefferson taking on Niles in Niles this Friday. I think this is going to be a real fun game. We saw Gerard really shut down Jefferson's offense for the first time all season. Jefferson got shut down, and Mike, your Gerard boys, man, they're rocking it so far this season. We'll talk to them a little bit later on. But coming in against Niles, a team who I think is a better squad than they were last year. They've had some good wins. Unfortunately, they went up against a strong Alliance team. They lost to Lakeview last week, but they have wins over their rival Howland and Independence. So, once again, we're still so early in season. I know this is the halfway point, but that 2-2 record, I think, very deceiving for this Niles team. And Jefferson at 3-1, taking the tough game last to start out NE8 play. They're going for this final run here in conference play, and I think they're going to really turn it around against Niles. I expect this to be a shootout.
The problem with Niles right now, Alec, is the fact that they're missing the running back. Antoine Gardner, who's a playmaker on that field, there were some reports that, Gardner was going to try and leave Niles and head for, an open enrollment school to play this year. And then he decided to stay at Niles, and he's that difference maker on the field for their offense. And because he's been out due to an injury, they haven't had much offensive production without him behind they lost a couple games and they beat Independence, and Independence's defense just isn't very good. Independence as a team isn't very good this year. So without Gardner, I think that this offense could be completely different, and Niles just isn't the same without him.
Yeah,
I mean that's an unfortunate loss right there to not have your superstar guy, especially in a game like this that they kind of do need to win. You're in conference play now. Every game matters. You can really only afford one loss in conference play. I mean, DJ did a great interview yesterday with Andy Hake. Really fun to listen to, and Andy Hake's principle I think really pays off for every team. You can afford one loss out of conference, one loss in conference. That's how you have to build your schedule. That's how you have to go about things. If you take that one loss, you can't do it again, or else you're not making it to the playoffs and your season's kind of a bust.
I'd agree with that.
And so this is a game Niles really needs, and so does Jefferson since they lost that first one. If they're going to make this final run and have a chance to take the NE8, they really need to come out here and play it well. They haven't had the best strength of schedule, but they've been really good offensively, so it's kind of negated that because they're ranked 24th in Division 4. Niles Cummins ranked 64th, so 40 teams between them here in Division 4 football. I got Jefferson taking it.
And like you said, Alec, with the strength schedule too, it's not the best, but I don't care who you're playing. When you're put up 66, 20, 56 points in your 3 wins, I don't care who you're playing. That you have pretty good offense. And I think, like Richie said with Niles, when you're missing pretty much your key guy on offense and pretty much one of your key guys on the team, that's going to cause for struggles. But I don't think it's any slate shot at who Niles is. The team, they're still a good team, but I think they're going up against a team with Jefferson has a little bit more firepower.
Yeah, I'm taking the Falcons here in a big one in the NE8. I think Jefferson and their offense has been a juggernaut with Grant Hitchcock, another guy who runs it really well. He's their quarterback, and they've got some talented receivers on the outside like Trent Hodge, who's called a lot. I've been watching a couple of their games, especially on 440 and Goal, our partner. So I was able to watch that, and I was very impressed with some of the receivers they've had. So I'm going to take Jefferson.
How great have those 440 and Gold guys be? They're so entertaining to go listen to. If you haven't caught any of their games, make sure you do so this week, and they have been a great addition here to the network.
Yeah, I had a chance to go to Chicago with them and do a little flag football. And, Sam Torres is the guy who's on the air, and then Ryan's the guy who's kind of like our Brian, like the technical guy. So, they're fun to listen to. I know Sam, he's got some interesting calls that I always laugh at, but it's fun to watch.
Fun to listen to. It's been a real joy to have them on the networks. But our next game up, and we have the Kaiser Golden Tornadoes out of West Virginia taking on the Beavers out of Lisbon. Beavers been 2-2, but we just talked about the Potters, and they rolled them over last week, 58-0, spoiled that home opener. And this Beaver team, they've had a pretty good slate so far. They took tough losses against Indian Valley and Salem in weeks 1 and 2, but they bounced it back against Lyndon McKinley out of Columbus, a game that I think I actually took Lyndon McKinley into that matchup because they've had a good run so far. But I think Beaver Local playing better than that 2-2 record, especially when you look at the fact that they've put up 100 points in the last 2 weeks and only allowed 14. So I've been really impressed with how Beavers responded after dropping the first 2 of the season. Their team ranked 45th in the state of Ohio. Now you got to go up against a team that ranks 25th in all of West Virginia. But I think you got a good shot here if you're Beaver to make a real statement and give Ohio another dub.
I agree. I think Beaver Local is going to come away with a victory in this one. I think the big difference is Beaver Local's played 4. Kaiser from West Virginia has played 2. And
I think say that, yeah.
It's going to pay dividends in the end there because, Beaver Local is going to be conditioned in that second half. They're going to know how to play a complete game and finish that out. So I'm going to take Beaver Local. You mentioned the 2 losses to Indian Valley and Salem, and when you look at those 2 games, those were their 2 biggest of the season because they've got a pretty favorable schedule the rest of the way. So if they were able to take business in that the first 2, I think they would have been an 8-9 win team this year. But, unfortunately, they weren't able to win those 2.
Yeah, they're going to have 3 games this season out of state against a West Virginia opponent. So should be interesting to see how they roll on the rest of the year. They've given themselves quite the challenge, I think. But after what we've seen the last 2 weeks, if they roll in here again, and as you mentioned, Kaiser's only had those 2 games, and we always talk at game 2, game 3, teams are still dealing with those cramps in the second half. And you have guys coming on and off the field nonstop trying to help that out. If Beaver gets on a rhythm and really starts to push the tempo, these boys are going up against just aren't going to have a shot to breathe. And I think that's what Beaver really needs to do. And we kind of saw it last week against East Liverpool. They just kept pushing harder and harder every minute, and they really went ahead in that game and left no chance for the Potters to come back. So I'm going Beaver in this one as well. Keep it Ohio. Give the Buckeye State another win. They've been rolling over everyone.
I'm kidding. But
Mike,
Richie,
are you really going to go against your own state when I say that?
I don't buy into that stuff. But anyway, Richie, I was going to say that too. With before you even said it, I was looking at the schedule too about playing 4 games versus 2 games. That does matter. I mean, your 2 games are still getting your legs underneath you, but 4, you know, like you just said, conditioning part of it. When it's getting later in the game, it's halftime, when things are going wrong, making adjustments. You're more in season when you're middle of the season when you got 4 games under your belt. So I got them for that reason too.
Yep, I'm going to take Beaver local as well.
Next one up here, Leetonia taking on United in United. And I got the chance to see these Golden Eagles last week. Man, they're a tough squad. And Andy Hake's going to give them 1,000% of the credit in that game. And last week, because Valley Christian ran over him, but he's like, I didn't think we'd do that. They put out some great boys. And for whatever reason, we just had the big plays turn our way. They didn't have a play over 30 yards in that game last Friday. That's what he said yesterday on the coach's corner with DJ Oakley. So, to keep that in mind, United's defense is very strong. They just got really, for the first time we've seen in a while, out physical to the football game. And they have a great athlete at quarterback in Luke Courtney, who, by the way, can drill a field goal from about 60 yards, reportedly, from what we've heard. Saw him look at a couple of big ones in that game. But it's a United team. I think they're coming back with vengeance. And with the way we've seen Leetonia play, they've only put up scores in 1 game on the season, and they've allowed 180 to go the other way. I think I would not want to be on that Leetonia Bears roster this week, because I think it's going to be a hurting United puts on it, because I think these Golden Eagles are going to come back with a vengeance. They've won 2 straight EOAC championships. I don't think that they're going to let this go that easy. It's going to be a rough week for these Bears.
Yeah, guys, I don't want to say anything negative, but I hope Leetonia has a team by week 8, because they've had some school board meetings and administration meetings where they've had a couple guys quit. They got a couple guys hurt. They don't have the numbers. And it's tough right now. You're 0-4. Nothing's really going your way. And I think they're going to be 0-5 after this week. I think United takes this one pretty big.
Yeah, when United's got a lot of weapons too, like Alex said, overall and in the special teams game, versus a team like you said that's struggling. It does not have much going for them right now. With, like you said, with obviously when you're a losing program, things are going to start coming adversity and some other things off of it. You're going to come up with it, but I don't think Leetonia's in the right place right now to try to take a win like this. So I got United. I
mean, I hope Leetonia turns it around, because I love this EOAC. I don't want to see any teams drop every game on the season. We just saw East Palestine get out of that rut. Congratulations to them last week. Love to see it. I don't want Leetonia then to fall into that side of it. I hope that they can turn things around. Don't think I'm saying anything negative. I just think that Golden Eagle team, they're coming in with fire.
Yeah. No, I think we're all on the same page.
Well, this one's going to be a huge game. Austintown Fitch, they're taking on Lewis J. Bennett, Olmsted Middle Early College East. I don't think they have enough words in that school. Out of Buffalo, New York.
I was just going to say,
yeah, we'll call them the Buffalo Tigers. How about that? It'll make it a lot easier than reading off that entire name every single time. But those Buffalo Tigers, they lost a game to start out the season in overtime against McDowell out of Erie, PA. Then they won their second game, their home opener against Clarence last week, 36-7. But kind of the same thing we talked about with that West Virginia school. Game 3 versus Game 5 against a Fitch team that, by many, people's expectations, is a team that could go out there and take a state championship out of Division II this season. They're currently ranked 8th in the state, in Division II, 26th in the state of Ohio in total, with a real hard strength of schedule. And for me, I see this Fitch team, they have taken the best of the best out of the Youngstown region and Ursuline. They took the best out of the best of Nevada and Foothill. They've taken on a powerhouse school in Canton McKinley, big name recognition over there, and they took on a Canton Glen Oak team. And Ursuline was the closest one we saw, and that was due to a late comeback. No one has really been able to hang with Fitch for 4 straight consecutive quarters, and you see that come along in the rest of the season. Fitch needs this win. They need this momentum center, because they're going up against the greatest dynasty in the history of Ohio next week in Massillon, Washington. So this is a Fitch program. They're firing on all cylinders, and it's going to be a challenge this week going up against a team from out of state. You always have it, but that's what they want this season. That's what they've been doing, and they've been doing it better than I've seen anybody else. Right now, for me, they're my favorite team. I think we have going on. Richie, I know you're all of your Canfield Cardinals till your grave, but this is a program right now playing really well. And the Buffalo Tigers, they're coming in with a power rush offense. That's what they're going for. They're averaging 366 yards on the game so far. Per game, with 7 touchdowns in total between their first 2 on the ground. They have a decent quarterback as well in Davis, a senior. 63% of his passes he's completed on. And through 2 games, he's put up 446 yards and 2 touchdowns, but 1 interception. If he gets turnover heavy in this one, Fitch is going to roll.
Even though I'm a Canfield guy through and through, I still agree with you. I think Austintown Fitch is the best team in this area right now. Strength of schedule is up there. They beat some of the biggest powerhouses. Foothill was the number 7 team ranked in Nevada coming into week number 1, and they handled them at home 42-10. They're on a roll. They're playing some of their best football. They had a 4 touchdown lead against Ursuline in that first half. And like you said, a little late comeback. Ursuline got a couple quick ones here and there. But, outside of that, I think Fitch is one of the best teams in the state of Ohio this year in Division II. So with that, I'm going to take the Falcons over Lewis J. Bennett.
I agree, because I was actually at that Ursuline Fitch game last week, and Alec, like you said, comeback, sure, that was great. Ursuline wasn't unfortunate, they lost it, but you can't. It's hard to hang with this team for 4 quarters, even a half too, because they just have athletes of all sizes on this team. I also, that's one thing I look for when I'm watching high school teams is, obviously size doesn't always matter, but they look like football players on this team in every skill position, on guys up front and linebackers. They're a solid team. They're all around well team. And I think that's going to, give them a win this week.
Yeah, and Fitch, they're going to be led this week by Cam Smith, a guy who's going to be playing with that Canfield's Brock Lowry at Iowa State in 2023. He's committed there, currently a 3-star. And they also got a 2-star running back, Jamel James, ranked 102nd in the state of Ohio. So got to watch out this Fitch team. They got talent. But I do want to point this out, because that Foothill win, we talked about how great that looks over there. Foothill right now, they've dropped to 1-3. Despite that, they're still ranked at 13th in the state of Nevada because of that strength of schedule. So that Fitch loss for them is still carrying a ton of weight on what this season has been for that Foothill program. So, count that win for Fitch, but that Foothill team, they're getting a lot of credit for coming in this far across the state as well, across the country. It's a long flight. I've had that flight. It's not a fun one. It's long. You're there for a while, but Fitch took them down. They took them down hard too. But I like Fitch in this game. Until Fitch shows a hole in this team, I don't think you can pick against them.
Yep.
Yeah. I think next week's going to be their test with like you said, Massillon, Washington.
That's going to be game of the year right there. Calling it right now. Game of the year, Washington and Fitch. Because Massillon, Washington, they have 24, 27 state championships with their football program.
Something like that. They're the best team in the state. Best program.
Best program overall. St. Ed's, though, out of Cleveland, they're starting to rock the boat up there. They're putting together a real good dynasty program as well for the state of Ohio. But next in this game, all be on tomorrow night. Lowellville in Jackson Milton. Battle of the undefeateds. Jackson Milton's coming in off of a close matchup last week against Western Reserve. They had a tight matchup against Newton Falls in week 2. But their other 2 games, Latonia LeBray, not only did they handle business, their defense pitched shutouts. And that's the one thing. While their offense has had struggles in the big games against Falls and Western Reserve, that defense is held really strong for Jackson Milton. And Richie, just like you were talking about with Canfield, if this Blue Jay squad is going to come out here and beat a powerhouse of Lowellville with an expert offense, their defense is going to have to be the unit that steps up. They do have a really good quarterback in Chiavi, but through their 4 games, 3 interceptions. And if you go out throwing interceptions in a game like this, it's going to splatter your momentum. They have a really good offense. I don't think you can really argue that. Throwing-wise, 224 yards a game. Running-wise, 137 yards per game. But it's going to come down to this defense for me, because I think both teams have really, really awesome offenses. And the biggest problem I have when you look at Lowellville and their defense is, their offense is scoring so much. Their defense, is getting kind of tired, and their opponent's getting 1,000 chances on offense to actually go down and make a drive. So they're going to score more often than you see against other opponents. But I think especially when you look at the first 2 weeks, they averaged 52.5 points. And then you still look at these last 2 weeks against better defenses in South Central and Springfield, and they're still averaging 45 points per game out of those two. They're coming in here with, in my opinion, the best offense we have in the Valley. Their boys are still up there among the best in the entire state of Ohio. And it's awesome to watch, in my opinion. It's when you compare them nationally as well to every program around. Completions, they are averaging 66 completions per game. National average is at 24. This is a unit right now that is firing on all cylinders. 21 passing touchdowns, over 500 yards on the ground. So as much as you talk about this wide receiver core and how great this wide receiver core is, it might not even, be the best part of their game with Balone and his guys, because they're still running the ball with so much efficiency. It's insane. 8.7 yards per carry to run the football.
That's huge. And you know what? I think Jackson Milton has the most to gain in week number 5 this week. I know it's kind of a bold statement, but the Blue Jays right now are trying to prove to everybody that they belong in the talks as one of the best teams in the MVAC this season. It's no longer Springfield's conference. We all know that with the start that they've had this season. Jackson Milton 4-0, Lowville 4-0. But the Blue Jays aren't getting any recognition as one of the top teams in our valley yet, because Lowville's Vinny Balone has put up some insane numbers. He's top 10 in the state almost every single offensive throwing category. So, it's all Lowville in the media coverage. It's all about the Rockets and how good they are. But Jackson Milton is coming in, and they're looking to prove a statement at home saying, hey, we have a chance to win the MVAC this season. We haven't done it in the past, but this is our year with a really good quarterback and a veteran group of guys.
Richie, I think to go with what you're saying too, is what better chance to do it when you're trying to prove it is against a team that has the same record as you in 4-0. This is a matchup where, when teams have higher powered offenses, who's gonna make extra, stops on defense to try to get to separate yourselves when you're going up against an offense that's almost as lethal as yours. So again, what better way to make another statement in this conference and overall than just to get another win on the road too?
Yeah, I mean, this is a wide open conference at the moment. It's anybody's for the taking after Springfield, took their step back this season and, are going to rebuild that program. And I think they're going to be right back up there in no time. But this right now, I just love this program that we're seeing in Lowville and this offense. But Richie, you're right on the money. Most of the game, you definitely have to give that over to Jackson Milton, because as you said, even me, who's going on the game, I'm looking at him and go, man, they need something to go their way in this. And I'm already discrediting what they've done this season. I know I'm going to need to take a step back by tomorrow and, get back off that rocket, off the rocket, I guess I should say, and, make this an even game. But I've been so on this Lowville team. I'm so glad I'm getting a shot to call them, because I saw Vinny Balone in this offense when he was a sophomore, and they were leading the MVAC anyway, statistically, when it came to yards and touchdowns. And Vinny Balone right now, 6th in the state of Ohio officially, with 1,100 yards, 21 touchdowns for him. Only other guy ahead of him in the region is Drew DeShields at number 5 out of West Branch, a guy I believe you got to see a little earlier on against your Canfield Cardinals. But when you look at 21 touchdowns for him, that stat leads the state of Ohio. No one has thrown for more touchdowns so far than Vinny Balone, and that's a good, real credit to his wide receiver group, who is being led by Brady Bunofsky, number 6 wide receiver in the state of Ohio at the moment in terms of yardage. So the uphill battle, I think, for both teams, because with all Jackson Milton has to prove in this game, they're going to give Lowville the hardest shot they've taken of the season. But until I see Lowville's offense stop, I'm going Rockets.
Yeah, I'm with you. I know I talked a lot about Jackson Milton, and they need to come out and they need to prove they're still one of the top contenders in the conference this year. I just think Lowville's offense is going to be too much, and I'm going to take the Rockets in week 5.
Mike?
I'm going to flip it and go Jackson Milton. I think with, shootouts, anybody has a chance to win. At least on paper, it should be that way, but we'll see what actually happens. But shootouts call for things to happen. I think for a road team going in, like Richie said, when you're trying to have a statement win to try to solidify yourself, what better way to do it? And I think they have what it takes going to get a road win like this. So I'm going to go with Jackson Milton.
My final thought on this game before tomorrow, and obviously I'll talk more about it on the broadcast, but in order for Jacksonville to win this game, I don't think it can be a shootout. Louisville's offense has been so great. They have to make this a game that's ending under 30 points for both teams.
Physical.
They need to make this a physical, tough battle. Make this the most offensively challenging game Louisville will have to play this season, and that's how you come out with the win, because you're not going touchdown for touchdown with Louisville. No one's been able to do that. The way teams have beat Louisville in the past and stunted their great non-conference momentum that they've come in with, because we've seen this in past years, great offense, but then it doesn't turn into wins in conference, is great defense. You need great defense to stall out this offense. But a couple more games here that I guess we'll save a couple for tomorrow if we don't get to them. I don't want to speed through them because that's not what we were trying to do. This might become a 3-day extravaganza with football in the future. But Poland going up against South Range. I guess I'll go a little bit quicker on this one. South Range, people kind of went hold on against Struthers last week, but I think because everyone going hold on last week, I think they're coming out big against Poland, who obviously has had a rough schedule. I mean, going up against Cheney, Canfield, and Hubbard, and they beat Hubbard last week. They beat Louisville. They didn't do great in week 1 against Cheney. We'll throw that out. It's week 1. Everyone's afforded one throwout, but against Canfield, their hardest opponent outside of Cheney, still 31-7, and now they go up against an undefeated South Range. They have had one of the hardest schedules so far. I think they can keep it close because we've seen them do that, but I think South Range are going to pull away, trying to make a little bit of a statement after some tight games their last couple of weeks.
Yeah, they kind of fluttered against Struthers last week. They had 6 turnovers in the ball game offensively, and they still found a way to win the football game.
That's why I'm taking them here. How do you turn it over that much and still win?
That just tells you with Coach Yeagley, they've got that winning culture. They find ways to win. Their defense is stout. I think Poland's going to make this a better game. I think for the Bulldogs, you got to have Bryce Behringer out on the field. If you don't have Bryce Behringer, this is going to be a uphill battle offensively. A guy that runs with a lot of explosiveness and is a great tailback for the Bulldogs. So I think it's going to be a tighter game than a lot of people think, because when you look historically, South Range and Poland, 2 teams that have played in the last 3 years, and it's been a 1 or 2 touchdown game every single year. South Range has taken 2 out of the 3, but I'm going to still have to go with the Raiders. They're undefeated, and I think they're going to continue that. And like you said, they do have something to prove this week after, Struthers, who was close with them in week 1 in the NE8 conference slate. But I think South Range is going to come out and they're going to beat the Bulldogs.
Mike?
Richie, when you're talking, you brought up that point with the turnovers. When you're talking about teams that, are good with the record they have, 3rd in the YSN power rankings in South Range, that's what separates you from a lot of other teams too. When you're a team that, doesn't play the best, but you still find ways to win. And I think until something like that doesn't happen, give you reasons to not pick them, you got to roll with South Range.
I agree. And Richie, I want your thoughts on this one. So Mohawk going up against Riverside this week. I don't know a lot about these PA teams. I'm an Akron boy, so once we hop over the border, I'm really getting lost. It took me a couple of years to get all these Youngstown schools down, and now we're crossing over the border. So I'm a little behind. But Riverside Mohawk kind of got run over by Laurel in week 1, a really good Laurel team. But Riverside, they've beaten Southside. They lost to Southside in a 1-point game, 7-6, and then they beat Shenango last week, 27-6.
Yeah, and Southside's 3-0. They're good. Shenango's from Newcastle. They beat 27-6, like you said. Mohawk, they had some off-the-field issues, so they weren't able to play. I'm going to have to go with Riverside. Just because Mohawk's still trying to get back into the flow of play. They weren't able to practice during that situation, so they only had a couple days of practice before their first game, and it's almost like this is their off season right now in practice. So I'm going to have to go with Riverside and the Panthers.
Mike?
Again, since I'm with you, Alex, I don't know too much about these PA teams, so I guess I'll side with Richie with it.
I'm going with Richie as well, just because I'm in that same department. I don't know. So Richie's leading the picks here, but I got Riverside. They got a good strength of schedule so far. And, the fact that they lost by 1 point to Southside in a defensive battle, and then they go out the next week and play really good offense and maintain that defense, they're working on both sides of the football very well. So I'll go that way with you. A couple games here left. Salem taking on Franciscan. I got Salem in this game. I know they took that rough loss last week to Canton Central Catholic, and they were in a tight game against Beaver. Well, that Beaver team's turned out pretty good. We found out Crestview has an offense, and they were able to hold them to just 7 points. They held down the Potters in week 3. They had one slip up here. I'm forgiving that. We haven't seen a lot out of Franciscan. They dropped it to Holy Name, Ursuline, North Royalton. They did pick up a good win against Sandusky last week. I'll give them that one. That was a Sandusky team that came in 2-1 with a better offense and a pretty all right defense. So I like Franciscan a little bit, but I think Salem's going to get right back in the win category.
I'm with you. I'm going to take the Quakers here. I don't think Franciscan's very good. Salem, who dropped a real tough one when you look at Canton Central Catholic in the final 2 drives of that ball game. So they could be 4-0 right now with some quality wins over Beaver Local and Canton Central Catholic. But right now they're 3-1, and I think they're going to come out. It's on the road, but I don't think that's going to do any factor with the Quakers at all. I think they're going to take care of Franciscan on the road.
And Richie, one thing I like about Salem too, and a reason why I'm going to pick them, all the 4 of the games they've been in close games and some not so close games. So any situation that this game could be in, I think they're better equipped to, kind of handle that. So I got to go Salem.
I like it. Hubbard taking on Struthers this week. It's a home game for those Eagles coming off the loss to Poland last week. I think kind of a shocking loss as well when some people looked at that because Hubbard 3-0. I know they lost their big running back to Ohio State in the offseason, but they were looking like they were bouncing right back with a strong defense. And to see a team come in there and put up 4 touchdowns against them, I think probably the big shock out of that game for them, considering they had only allowed 2 touchdowns on the entire season. So I think that one's the real shocker. I think they do turn it around, but with Struthers' defense, man, we just saw it, right? They just had 6 takeaways against South Range. I know it didn't translate to a win, but if they can get that offense rolling when that defense is playing that well, which they're going to need to have happen for them, I don't see any reason why Struthers can't come in and take this game away from Hubbard if their defense continues to play like they did against South Range. It gives yourself opportunities, and if that offense just feels a little bit of momentum and they can grab onto it, they're going to steal this from Hubbard if these Eagles aren't careful.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this is one of the tougher games to pick, especially in the NE8 this week, because you got a Hubbard who looks 3-1 and then Struthers who's 1-3. But, Hubbard's won some really close games. I'm going back to week 2 against Greenville, where Greenville was at the 2-yard line in the last possession and they fumbled the football. And Hubbard hangs on to that 8-3 win. And then the Bulldogs, who at home beat Hubbard, I think that was one of their biggest tests was Poland so far this season.
Yeah.
Their strength of schedule just really hasn't been there. And, Struthers with Jazzy Cognac, who was one of our Big Dog of the Valley recipients this week. So I don't know. This could go back and forth. I'm going to take Hubbard just because they've won 3 games this year. They know how to win in close situations. So I'm going to have to take the Eagles.
Mike?
Richie, I'm glad you brought that up because it is kind of a tough game because some teams you can't always pay attention to the record. I think Struthers is one of those teams. Shooting yourselves in the foot. And sometimes you can just clean up those turnovers. I know it's harder to do during the season and make adjustments, but if you clean things up, you can come away with wins. And Alec, you picked your one upset for the day. This might be my one upset. I think I could go that way.
That would be one heck of one to see Hubbard fall. But, in Division 4 football as well, Hubbard ranked 46th at the moment. Despite the 1-3 record, Struthers only a little bit behind back at 61 in Division 4. So not a lot of spots separating this. And I think that's a very good upset to pick. Until I see Struthers, they'll get that offense going. It's going to be hard for me to pick it. They did it week 1 against Aquinas, but week 2 fell kind of down. And I think last week going up against, I think, a comparable defense to this week in Hubbard, maybe even a little bit better in Hubbard. That offense just couldn't get going. We saw them go big against Streetsboro with 41. They couldn't pull out the tight game. They couldn't pull out the tight game last week. We've seen Hubbard do nothing but take tight games so far in the season. So, Richie, to your point, that they have that advantage, and they played in a lot of these late game scenarios. They have that 2-minute offense down. They know how to operate in these close, tough, no momentum games. Until Hubbard gives you that back-to-back slip-up, Poland was a great test. But I think until I see them slip up this week, I don't know if I could take Struthers against them. I think Struthers a real good program at the moment. I think they're going to shock as the season goes on. I think they have a real good chance against, Lakeview, Jefferson, McKinley, and then Poland in the final week. I don't know about Girard, but, I think they have some really good chances with how their defense plays. But until I see them put it together on the offense, I'm taking Hubbard.
Mm-hmm. Yep, same.
Well, with no Power Hour coming up next, their show pushed till tomorrow because they're going prime time tonight at 5 o'clock, remote edition. We're going to keep things rolling a little bit longer. One more game to talk about, and then we'll cut it short for you. But I guess cut it long. But the next game here, not really a great one, but it's Ursuline, a team bouncing off a loss last week, a tough loss to Austintown Fitch. Now they go up against Warren G. Harding, who arguably has had an absolutely brutal schedule. Medina week 1, whose former quarterback took some snaps, and I think the same week at Penn State. Then they go up there against Bookdale, and they do pull out a win. Bookdale, I know they're 0-4, but that's an area in Akron that you just don't want to mess with very often. They normally will give you everything you can bargain for. Then they go up against Hudson. They drop that game. A Hudson program undefeated right now over there in the Suburban League. Shout out. That's my old conference from high school. And then you look at the fact they go up against Massillon, Washington last week. It's been brutal. So I think you do kind of have to push aside the record at the moment for this Harding team and more understand they are a very, very good program, but they have had it very, very rough so far. And it's not lighting up either because they have Ursuline this week. Then they have St. Vincent, St. Mary next week. You have Fitch and Cheney to end out the year. And in between these two powerhouses, they still have Boardman and Canfield, two huge name recognition. Talk about the hardest schedule in football this season. Warren G. Harding, they put their name in the cap on that one because I don't think you get much harder than that.
No, that is brutal. I mean, Harding 1-3. I think this is a little bit of a down year for Warren Harding. Although they played a tough competition, I think Ursuline 3-1. They showed a lot of good signs in that second half against a very talented Austintown Fitch team. And, the way that went in the second half got a little chippy. You had some players that got hurt, some extracurricular activity on the sideline. So, I think Ursuline's a little bit peed off after that game against Austintown Fitch, and I think they're going to come out and they're going to hand it to Harding.
Richie, things got ugly at the end. I think there was a kid on the sidelines that actually got a tackle thrown into him, and he broke his leg on Ursuline's side, I believe. So things got ugly at the end. So I think with Harding's schedule, it's pretty tough. But I think Ursuline's had a couple tough games too, Alec, with your Brookfield team. I know you guys like, but they beat them pretty good. And I think Fitch, that was a tough game, but they found a way to come back and make it interesting. So Harding's had a little bit of
the tough matchup against Farrell in there as well.
That one too, yeah. I skipped over that one, but I gotta stay on the Ursuline side of it.
I'm staying with Ursuline as well because Warren, they got beat up. They've had the hardest schedule, but I agree with Richie. It's a bit of a down year. Their offense, despite the fact of that very hard schedule, their offense just hasn't been there. And I'll say their defense doesn't look great. It's still only 102 points. They're only allowing about 25 points per game, which, considering their schedule, is not bad. But when you go up against an offense in Ursuline that has put up just shy of 200 points in 4 games, good luck stalling that out. I think even with how good Warren can be and, negate that hard schedule, if they had an easier schedule, I mean, I don't think it's any problem saying they'd be undefeated right now if they had, comparable schedule to the likes of, Jackson, Milton, or Lowellville. If they took one of those lighter schedules, and I think they'd be undefeated, no problem to come into this week, but they haven't. And we haven't seen the offense. And while the defense has been good, Ursuline coming in with arguably the best line on both sides in the state of Ohio. That's per Randy Clark, by the way. That's a direct quote from a coach who saw them week 1. That's the best line he's ever seen. Ursuline's going to run hard in this game. They're going to run over him. They're going to get sacks on sacks, and they're going to win this one with racks on racks.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm taking the Irish.
I'm thinking, yeah.
There's no other way to follow that up.
There isn't.
You just can't. You just can't.
I do want to throw this one out there because it's our school. Richie, you're an alma mater, obviously, for college. You just recently graduated, but our Youngstown State Penguins football going out to the SEC country to take on the number 9 ranked Kentucky Wildcats. As you know, we're allowed to push a little farther now. There's no power hour on. I want to get your guys' thoughts on this game going into this week. And as we're all YSU students and former student there in Richie, and they're looking all right this season.
Yeah, good wins against Duquesne and Dayton. Obviously, strength schedule is not really there for the Penguins. I mean, you kind of bring in Duquesne and Dayton hoping to get to 2-0, and they have been. They've taken care of business. Last week, there were some bright spots, especially with Jaleel McLaughlin, who's probably the best running back in all of FCS football. So I think
last year.
He was last year. I think he could be that again this year, and I think Kentucky's going to have to stop him. And, if they are able to stop Julian McLaughlin, I think it's going to be tough for the Penguins to come out victorious in that game, to be honest with you. But, the Wildcats, watching them on Saturday night against Florida in the Swamp, they look really good. So I'm going to have to go with Kentucky here. I think it's going to be an all right game. I think Youngstown State may cover, but I think Kentucky's going to win it.
Well, yeah, cover. I was looking yesterday. I don't know if it's out yet, but the spread's not even out yet, so I don't know if that tells much. But, yeah, I think you're right. I think if they shut down McLaughlin, there's just not much left in the YSU offense because they're more of a run-heavy team. I think we know that. We saw it last year. They run a lot more than they pass the ball. And I don't think there's a whole lot in their passing game. I could be wrong if things can change, but I got to believe that Kentucky, that's the one thing they're looking at with YSU. They're going to be able to stop that. So, unfortunately, I'm actually going to this game too. I was talking to you about it, Richie, but I actually am going to go. So, we win, I'll be storming the field. You guys know that.
But, to your point there, Richie, if this Kentucky team just went into Florida, they're one of two teams in the last 2 years to actually go in to the Swamp and come out with a win. I think Florida was 5-1 last year at home. So Kentucky pulled off a really big win in that game. And I found the betting line here. Vegas Insider has Kentucky favored by just 25.5, which is a lot smaller than I think it should be, because you look around and, Ohio State last week, against Arkansas State, an FBS team was favored, by 40 points. We've seen a lot of 40-point spreads early in the year, and they're only saying 25.5. I think that goes to credit how much better Youngstown State has been this season. So props to our boys over there. I mean, averaging 40 points a game. You're only allowing 15 points on the defense. They're going to have it rough these next couple of weeks, man. If they can run the gauntlet, even if they keep this close and lose to Kentucky, which, I think is maybe best case scenario you talk about right now in terms of thinking, well, then they got North Dakota State, North Dakota, Indiana State 3 weeks after that. It's going to be rough. But if they can weather this storm, man, Penguins, with the way things are going, they give themselves a shot to make some noise down here in the FCS this season. And with the way Crenshaw's thrown, 384 yards, 5 touchdowns in 2 games, completion percentage needs to be better in this game. But so far, more touchdowns than his opposing quarterback, former Penn State boy, and Will Levis, so far in the season, less yards. But Will Levis also has interceptions on his book, none for Crenshaw. And I think that's maybe the biggest criticism of YSU quarterbacks the last couple of years. They haven't been able to throw for touchdowns, and turnovers became really big. We haven't seen that problem from Crenshaw so far this season. And if he keeps it clean, man, YSU, they got a chance. ESPN's matchup predictor, based on their football power index, has YSU at a 2.3% chance to take this football game. See that. You're telling me there's a chance, man. And, if this was a normal show and I wasn't a YSU fan, I'd be taking the Wildcats 100%. But I'm not, and I just want to ring the bell again because it's fun. Give me our Penguins, baby. I want YSU to come out here and take it. Mike, I hope you get to storm that field. Make them SEC boys cry all the way back home.
All the 30 YSU fans that are making the trip down there, all 30 of us.
Yep, 30 people in a 61,000 person
I'm just
stadium.
saying 30. I'm just saying that number. I don't know how many are actually going, but
I don't know. I've heard about a pretty big turnout heading down there. I already noticed people are missing from my classes today. So I expect they're already down there partying.
Yep.
But that is going to do it here for the Casual Sports Podcast with our special guest this week, Richie Giuliano. Thank you for coming onto the show. Your first time, and first time you do it, we go over an hour. So thanks a lot. That's on me. But this has been the Casual Sports Podcast. Day 2 of our high school football extravaganza continues tomorrow. Myself and Matt Morrison going to be breaking down another 16 games here for that. So make sure you tune in. Power Hour Super Show is going to come up after that tomorrow. And obviously, then we kick it off to football to finish the night going into Saturday. We got some great games on the network, so make sure you tune into those. Once again, thank you, Richie, for joining the show today. It's been a pleasure. I'm Alec Aberna, joined by Mike Wolfgang tonight. We'll see you all tomorrow here on the Casual Sports Podcast.